So, guys, something interesting just happened. The Las Vegas Raiders have officially trimmed down to their 53-man roster. And some moves went exactly as I predicted, but some moves even left me scratching my head. A few names we thought were locks didn't make it. A couple of surprise faces are still standing. And there's even one cut that feels almost impossible to explain unless you dig a little deeper. They have also finalized their initial practice squad as well, so let's deep dive and try to look at what actually the management is trying to do and what benefits they can get from this. What's up, Raiders fans? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Raiders. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about breaking down everything you need to know about the Raiders. So, the Raiders' first round of cuts made one thing obvious. This staff is prioritizing fit over reputation. Edge Andre Carter is the clearest example. He flashed length and burst in preseason, the kind of traits you'd usually keep developing. Still, he's out. In this scheme, potential alone wasn't enough. The staff didn't see him holding up in the role they needed. Amari Gaynor tells a similar story. Productive under Patrick Graham, but the new defensive vision doesn't value him the same way. His skill set no longer fits. And just like that, he's gone. Zach Carter might be the biggest surprise. First-team reps in camp usually signal trust. Instead, he was cut. That decision shows how quickly evaluations can flip when coaches don't see consistency translating to Sundays. And then there's Sincere McCormick. Fans loved the toughness, but running back is a numbers game. With Ashton Jeanty, Zamir White, and Dylan Lobb offering more versatility, McCormick became expendable. So he chose San Francisco for a clearer path forward. Names like Jaw Joyner, Jared Hufford, Colin Johnson, Philip Dorsett, Dalton Wagner, and Terrell Edmonds rounded out the list. Not shocks individually, but together they reinforce the same point. This roster is being shaped by a very specific vision, and sentiment isn't part of the calculation. The message from Cutdown Day is clear. Talent matters, but only if it fits the plan. And the 53-man roster only tells half the story. The depth chart reveals the rest, where the Raiders are strongest, where they're exposed, and which decisions could define the season. Offensive line is the biggest concern. Thayer Munford survived Cutdown Day, but the tape shows clear struggles. He gave up losses repeatedly in preseason, and that was against backups. If starters like Joey Bosa or Max Crosby line up across from him, it could get ugly. Right now, this unit feels one injury away from collapsing. At tight end, the opposite story. Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, and Ian Thomas give the Raiders one of the deepest groups in the league. Add Carter Runyon on the practice squad, and you've got a pipeline of talent that could be featured heavily in Pete Carroll's offense. The running back room looks balanced but unspectacular. Ashton Jeanty and Zamir White should handle the bulk, while Raheem Mostert and Dylan Lobb provide depth and special teams value. McCormick's cut underscores that versatility, not just rushing ability, drove the final decisions here. No surprises at the wide receiver position. The initial look had Trey Tucker, Jack Beck, Jacoby Myers, and Dante Thornton Jr. And with the team signing Amari Cooper, he effectively becomes the fifth wideout in the mix. The staff's view was straightforward. Keep the core intact, then add a veteran who can still separate and raise the room's floor. What Amari Cooper brings right now? Motivation, veteran craft, and enough one-on-one separation to matter. He's not the same mover he once was, but the root IQ is there. The added value is mentorship, fine-tuning younger receivers' detail work. On Dante Thornton Jr. specifically, the upside is obvious, but he's not yet an elite separator. He wins downfield with size/ball skills. The next step is route detail. Amari Cooper helps accelerate that. On defense, the linebackers stand out as a strength. Cody Lindenberg, Jermaine Pratt, Devin White, and Jamal Adams form a versatile group with coverage ability and toughness against the run. Depth isn't an issue here. It's a core strength. The defensive line still runs through Max Crosby. He's the foundation, but support from Adam Butler, Jonah Lalu, Tyree Wilson, and Malcolm Kuncey will determine how dominant this unit can be. Losing Zach Carter was surprising, but the staff clearly felt other options gave them more. The secondary is where things get interesting. Q, Blue Kelly, and Darian Porter earned spots after strong preseason performances. Both bring length and competitiveness, but they're unproven. At safety, Jeremy Chin provides range, while Trayvon Morig and others will need to hold steady. Depth exists, but consistency is still a question mark. Step back, and the pattern is clear. The Raiders invested heavily in tight ends and linebackers, stayed top-heavy on the defensive line, but left the offensive tackle position vulnerable. That imbalance will define whether this roster can hold up when the season gets real. Once the 53rd was set, the next step was shaping the practice squad. This is where you find developmental pieces, insurance policies, and sometimes the future core of the roster. For the Raiders, the choices were as telling as the cuts. The biggest surprise was who didn't make it. Tommy Mellott, a 6th-round pick, was left off. Draft picks usually get every chance to stick, even on the practice squad. Mellott didn't. The staff clearly felt his transition to wide receiver wasn't coming fast enough, and they weren't going to carry out a project they didn't believe in. That's a bold statement. Andre Carter was another shock. He flashed in preseason enough that many thought he'd be stashed for development. Instead, the Raiders passed. Whether that's because Carter wants to pursue opportunities elsewhere or because the staff simply wasn't sold, the result is the same. A player with real upside isn't part of the plan. On the flip side, there were names who did make it and earned their shot. Shedrick Jackson showed flashes in preseason and brought enough to warrant a spot. Alex Bachman brings veteran steadiness, while Justin Shorter is the wild card the staff clearly sees something in. Together, those three form the depth at wide receiver behind the main roster. At running back, Chris Collier was one of the most encouraging adds. His preseason carries showed vision and burst. He's raw, but there's upside here. Maybe more upside than Zamir White or Raheem Mostert can offer at this stage of their careers. Defensively, Terrell Edmonds stood out. His tape showed quick recognition and sound tackling. He may be on the practice squad, but it's only a matter of time before he's elevated for real snaps. Jafari Harvey is more puzzling. He didn't flash much in preseason, but the staff chose him over Carter. Clearly, they value something we didn't see on game days. The offensive line depth includes Antonio Maffey and Dalton Wagner. Neither is starter ready, but both provide bodies at a position where the Raiders badly need option. Rounding out the group are names like Cam Miller at quarterback, Carter Runyon at tight end, Laki Tazi on the defensive line, and defensive backs Trey Taylor, J.T. Woods, and Greedy Vance. Some of these players are developmental projects. Others could be elevated on game days depending on injury. So the important thing to know here is that the practice squad is a mix of steady veterans, long-term projects, and a couple of players with real breakout potential. The Raiders didn't just stock it with filler. They made intentional choices, but the omissions of Mellott and Carter show they won't carry players just for optics. The practice squad tells us where the Raiders see potential growth, and just as importantly, where they've already decided to move on. Beyond trimming the roster and shaping the practice squad, the Raiders made one aggressive move that stood out, claiming Brennan Jackson off waivers from the Rams. Jackson isn't just another depth piece. He's a second-year edge defender with length, strength, and a preseason resume that jumped off the screen. 3 sacks and consistent pressure. The tape shows a player who knows how to win with leverage, disengage from blocks, and get into the backfield. That kind of production doesn't go unnoticed. Why did the Raiders make this move? Fit. In Pete Carroll's system, edge defenders can't just flash once in a while. They need to disrupt consistently. Jackson showed exactly that. His profile fits the type of rotational rusher this defense needs. Someone who can step in behind Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntz, keep the pressure alive, and develop into more over time. Compare that to someone like Jermaine Pratt when used on the line. Pratt is versatile, but not a natural edge rusher. Jackson, by contrast, is built for that role. Adding him strengthens the rotation and gives the Raiders more options when they slide Tyree Wilson inside on third downs. The value here isn't just about 2,024 snaps. Jackson is still on his rookie deal, which means the Raiders now control multiple years of a young, ascending player without paying veteran prices. That's smart roster building, adding a piece with upside and financial flexibility at a premium position. The bottom line, the Raiders saw an opportunity to get better at one of the most important spots on the field, and they moved quickly. Jackson may not be a household name yet, but his skill set gives the Raiders another tool in a defense that's being rebuilt piece by piece. And while that move is already official, there's another storyline lurking just beneath the surface. A trade rumor that, if it ever came true, would change this defense overnight. Roster cuts and waiver claims tell us where the Raiders are today. Trade chatter tells us what they might be building toward tomorrow. And right now, there's one rumor that refuses to go away. Multiple reports hinted at it. The Raiders have at least inquired about Micah Parsons. Now let's be clear, nothing is imminent. And the Cowboys haven't signaled they're shopping him. But the fact that Las Vegas even picked up the phone says a lot. Think about what Parsons would mean for this defense. Pairing him with Max Crosby would instantly create one of the most terrifying pass rush duos in football. Add in Tyree Wilson sliding inside on third downs and Malcolm Kuntz as part of the rotation, and suddenly you're looking at a front that's impossible to block straight up. Every offensive coordinator in the league would have to change their game plan. But here's the reality check. A move like that wouldn't come cheap. Parsons is a superstar, and acquiring him would mean heavy draft capital and a massive contract extension. The Raiders just invested big money in Christian Wilkins, and while his cap hit will open space next year, it's still a delicate puzzle to fit another mega deal on top. So why does this rumor matter? Because it reveals mindset. The Raiders aren't sitting still. They're watching the market, evaluating opportunities, and at least exploring the possibility of swinging big. Whether or not Parsons ever wears silver and black, the fact the team is positioned in those conversations shows ambition. And it's not just about stars. The tackle position is still a sore spot. Thayer Munford Jr.'s struggles make it clear the Raiders can't afford to be passive. If another viable lineman shakes free or becomes available via trade, expect this front office to be in the mix. That's the theme here. The roster is set, but it isn't finished. Claims and trades are still on the table. And if the Parsons rumor is any indication, the Raiders are thinking big. So here's where we stand. The Raiders have their 53-man roster. They made the tough cuts. They built out a practice squad that mixes veterans with raw upside. And they even pulled the trigger on a waiver claim that strengthens the pass rush. And on top of that, we've heard whispers of a blockbuster trade that, if it ever happened, would reshape this defense overnight. What do all these moves tell us? They tell us this staff has a very specific vision. They're not afraid to cut players who flashed. They're not afraid to let draft picks go. And they're not afraid to take calculated risks, whether it's adding a young edge rusher like Brennan Jackson or quietly testing the waters on a superstar like Micah Parsons.